Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm your pal Wes from Perfect Circuit, and today we've got another variety hour. This time we're going to be hosting three of our favoritist friends talking about their favoritist oscillators. Oscillators aren't just for your bedroom fan, they're one of the foundational aspects of all synthesis. Oscillators create the vibrations that wiggle the hairs in our ears and make us able to hear all these rich and juicy tones. One of the coolest aspects of Eurorack is the fact that you have a ton of options when it comes to oscillators. You could get raw, hot analog, you could get cold, harsh digital, you could get wavetables, additive things, whatever your heart desires. Or you could combine a hybrid of both styles, digital, analog, whatever you want. Modular synthesis is all about choosing the flavor that's best for you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friends and let them tell you about their favorite oscillators.
What is up, everybody? My name is Alex. I make music under the name ALX-106, and today we're going to talk about the Xaoc Devices Odessa. This is one of my favorite oscillators, and I like to use it because I feel like I can just plug it in and just make some cool sounds right away. I have lots of bread and butter options for oscillators. If you see in my rig here, I'm not even using any real oscillators. I'm just using a simulator for like single cycle waveforms. And if I were preparing for a live set, I'd probably sample a bunch of these tones that I'm making in here into a simulator and play those. That's one of my favorite things to do when I play live. But if I have the space, I'll just bring Odessa with me, and I'm either going to set it up in one of two ways, and I'm going to show you both. One is basically just like this, stereo in to my mixer here and just as a drone. And the other is going to be through the filter and a VCA to kind of make some like cool atonal percussion sounds. Now this thing can make some bread and butter tones, but like I've got plenty of options for that in my system and in other modules and my synthesizers and things like that. So what I like to use this for is more like atonal textures and percussive sounds. So what makes Odessa is that it's a harmonic oscillator and it's also an additive synthesis module. So basically you've got tons of sine waves, and with this knob, very similar to a filter, you're adding sine waves to those harmonics, to the frequencies of the harmonics in a waveform, right? So right now we're at a sine wave, so we're just hearing the fundamental. As we go up, we go to something that's very similar to a saw wave. We go over here, we get more spiky sounding. We go over here, we go way back to that fundamental. So the fun thing about Odessa is when you start messing around with the comb filter over here, and then the spectrum of the power density spectrum, whatever that means, and the bank here. So this is where we start hearing it move in our ears, and we can start doing these cool textural sounds, right? So we just kind of move some things around. I put some delay on now. And if we just listen to this with a rumble kick for some techno, maybe make it a little less intense there. So that's what I like doing with it there, just making some cool, weird textures and droney kind of things. If we add in some FM, we can get real noisy real quick. So another thing just to add to that texture, right? So super fun. All right, so the next way I like to use Odessa is in a very simple, basic subtractive voice. So I've got the even partials output running into the Evolution filter by Rossum, and then going into the WMD Javelin. That's my VCA/envelope. The envelope from Javelin's just going into Evolution. We could get more serious with this and be plugging it into things with Odessa, but again, I just love the hands-on control of this, so I'm not really like inclined to do too much with CV. Although, like I said, I definitely could. I'm going to slow down the tempo from what we had it, and we're going to use a different sounding kick this time. And now we'll just kind of listen to more of like a house beat, right? And then I'm going to bring in these sounds here. We're going to add some voices and add some spread. Go back to just one voice, get more percussive. So the thing I like about Odessa with that hands-on control is that I can just rock a total sequence and then just turn one of these knobs and evolve the sound a little bit. So yeah, that is my take on Odessa. Thank you, Perfect Circuit, for having me.
Hey everybody, it's Eric from the Circo YouTube channel. Thank you guys very much for checking this out. Thanks to Perfect Circuit for inviting me to talk about my favorite oscillator. Perfect timing because I just had a few shows and I just completely rebuilt my modular case so that it would be more of a travel rig, and as a result of doing that, added in a new module which I'm absolutely in love with, and that is the OXI Coral. It's a pretty amazing module that takes up a really small amount of space in a case, especially when you're looking at a travel case. It is 8-note polyphonic and it's 8-voice multi-timbral in one unit. And so it allows you to get a lot of flexibility and a lot of mileage out of it. I pair it up actually with the OXI One sequencer, and you can set that up so that one of the channels is a multi-track sequencer, so it can sequence 8 different MIDI outputs, and that can go into the OXI Coral via MIDI, and so you can sequence the 8 different voices individually using that sequencer, or an external MIDI sequencer if you want as well, but this one just happens to work really well with it. So let's take a look at the OXI One. So here we have the OXI One unit. So it has, as I mentioned, 8-voice polyphonic, 8-voice multi-timbral and 8-note polyphonic in one. You can mix and match those, so you can set it up as, 3 monophonic voices and a 5-note polyphonic voice if you want to, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. You've got per channel, you've got a filter, envelope, reverb, chorus. So you've got 2 different envelopes in here, which is amazing. So it allows you a ton of flexibility in one unit. As I mentioned, I'm using the OXI One sequencer. I've got one of the sequencers set up as a multi-track, which means that each one of these lines is a different sequencer in effect. So these 16 steps are kind of like the 16 steps on another sequencer, and you can mute individual ones. So I've got everything muted except for track 1. So if I hit play right now, so what you're hearing is one voice from the OXI Coral. You can see this voice right here is playing on this. If I was to unmute number 2, you can see that's the second voice. I have it set up right now so that track 1 goes to voice 1, track 2 goes to voice 2. So each one of these tracks is set up as a monophonic voice within the Coral, because that works best for my style, but you can set it up really any way you want. What's cool is you've got a lot of flexibility, so if you wanted, let's just bounce around to a couple different voices here. You can hear the reverb there, which you can so I can go into that particular voice, add more reverb, take the reverb away. You can adjust cutoff on the filter. You've got resonance. filter envelope and an amp envelope. And you've also got a lot of controls over the individual voice. You can change it up, you know, with a wave folding. You've also got control over octaves. And then fine-tuning of the voice as well. This also has a built-in chorus. And again, all of these are by voice. So if you were to mute that one and go back to this first voice, switch over to that voice, now I have control over the same stuff. Filter. Can add more reverb, take reverb away. Again, that's by voice, so if I want to add a ton of reverb to this voice, and then I go into a different voice, and let's say on this voice I don't want any reverb, I can go ahead and take it all out. Or I can add a bunch more in. And then as you mute different voices, so you can see you get a lot of different variety in here, and if you just add in, say, a kick drum and maybe a hat, you can do something like. And then bring in another voice if you want to. So basically everything you were hearing there except for the kick and the hi-hats was all coming from the OXI Coral. So ton of power in a small amount of space, which was really key because this case was really set up so that it could travel, so that it fits into one side of a rolling carry-on bag so that I can carry it on without having to check anything. And so I was looking for the most kind of bang for the buck with the amount of space that I could use. And so with just 4 different synth voices in here, just in this one, I have the ability to have 8 different synth voices just within one unit. So a ton of power and a ton of flexibility in one really small space. So there you have it, the OXI Coral, my favorite oscillator, my favorite synth voice in my modular rig at the moment. Amazing amount of flexibility, amazing amount of power in one relatively small amount of space. There are a few menus to dive through, but once you get the hang of the user interface, as you can see from the little demo there, it's actually pretty quick to move around and make adjustments on the fly. And yeah, I'm really loving it. So that's it, the OXI Coral, and paired up with the OXI One sequencer. Thanks again to Perfect Circuit for inviting me to participate in this, to talk about my favorite oscillator, and hope to see you in another video or in a show sometime soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Simon and I run a YouTube channel called BRiES, where I post music and demonstration videos, mostly of Eurorack gear. My favorite VCO has got to be Joranalogue Audio Design's Generate 3. Not only is it built like a tank, roadworthy and precise, It's designed from the ground up to provide the user with a really direct user interface, and depending on how you patch it up, there's a plethora of implementations that you can use Generate 3 for. Looking at the front panel can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but once you get your head around how Generate 3 works, it presents itself as a really reliable workhorse in every patch, be it as a modulator or as a sound source. Let me show you a few things with Generate 3. Generate 3 is a triangle core VCO with 3 harmonic generators, which all have a separate attenuverter and separate outputs. You can listen to the triangle core here. Then there's the fundamental or sine output. With these attenuverters you can invert the wave. There's the even or saw output. There's the odd output, which spits out the odd harmonics. And these volume knobs or attenuverters for the separate harmonic generators allow you to create basic wave shapes from the full output, which is a mix of all three. You can get a basic saw wave. You can also make a perfect square wave. But there's an interesting sound coming from the full output at literally every setting of these three knobs. And while these volume controls give the user a hands-on and direct way of shaping the timbre of a sound, they're also great for fine-tuning the level of the separate outputs when you use Generate to modulate another module, either at audio rates or at LFO rates. The separate harmonic generators feature a CV input as well that acts as a VCA for the outputs. And you can use this feature for all kinds of interesting and useful things. But one thing that you can do with this is, in this patch for example, modulating the amount of FM that's going to DOC. And you can still use the attenuverters on Generate 3 to set the maximum level or to invert the wave. Since the built-in VCAs are 4-quadrant multipliers, you can use them for ring modulation as well. And if we now listen to the full output and add some modulation to another harmonic generator, you can see that using these techniques in tandem with each other really yields interesting, sometimes unexpected results. Another feature that sets Generate 3 apart from other VCOs is the fact that there's two sync inputs which both react to all kinds of signals. You really don't need to send in a square wave like with some other VCOs. You can send in a slow or even weak signal and Generate 3 will sync just fine. Let me send a triangle from the DOC to the reset or hard sync input on Generate 3. And let's listen to the full output. Let's use the flip input, which is a soft sync. We can even use a cycling envelope or looping envelope to sync Generate 3. And there's nothing stopping us from using both types of sync simultaneously. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I haven't talked about the thru-zero phase modulation. There's also thru-zero linear FM. There's exponential FM as well. You can self-patch the module to create wavefold-like sounds. Or to create noise. And if you start combining all of these features, you can really get interesting sounds just from the full output of Generate 3. Yeah, Generate 3 is pretty awesome. And there's this popular trope in the modular world that you need two of everything, and especially when it comes to VCOs, I think that's a really valid approach. Two of the same oscillators that you know really well makes for a really balanced and versatile system that allows you to create interesting patches in no time. And if your gear acquisition syndrome is triggered and you want to know more about Generate 3, I encourage you to take a look at the page of Generate 3 on the website of Joranalogue Audio Design. There's a really elaborate user guide that I wrote that explains most of the functionality of Generate 3. And even if you're not interested in getting a Generate 3, there's really in-depth explanations in that guide about several synthesis techniques. I hope my short demonstration was a little bit educational, and thanks for watching through my section of this video. See you next time. Bye!
Alright, and that about wraps it up for our favorite oscillators. We got a little bit of analog, a little bit of additive, some multi-timbral digital. Gotta love it. Let's give a big thanks to our friends Eric, Alex, and Simon. You can check their channels out below here. Check those links down in the description. I would highly encourage you to also check out our blog Signal. And you know what? You have yourself a great darn day, and let us know in the comments what your favorite oscillators are, what your favorite waveform is, and you know what else? What's your favorite kind of pie? Mine is apple. We'll see you next time, everybody.